I've had the most incredible pleasure and honor to have directed 20 New Year's Day concerts from Vienna. Each one different, each one obviously full of wonderful music, wonderful atmosphere. It's a wonderful way to say Happy New Year to the world.
There is more music, and certainly with the various arts channels, there is certainly a heck of a lot more music. But BBC Two, I would think, probably has less music than it did. But more significantly, it is less adventurous. It specialises now in relays, concert relays, live. And they are excellent, and they get big audiences and introduce people to the excitement of music making. But it doesn't do the analysis programs that it used to do.
Music has been an important part of the program mix right from the beginning of television. Over the years, the emphasis has shifted from the classical to the popular. Nevertheless, the medium has created invaluable classical music archives and invented formats such as masterclasses, competitions, music lessons, New Year's and young people's concerts. It has also made some people stars, as we shall see. This is a glimpse at music in the air from its beginnings right up until today.
Hello, Radio Olympia. This is direct television from the studios at Alexander Palace.
The advent of television in the music world has been something that has made us all much more conscious of the way we look. It's been very much because it's such a powerful visual medium rather than an audio medium. Close-ups and the intensity of the camera very much close into performers. It's made us all very much more self-aware of our presentation.
Orchestral music programs came into vogue, and a full-scale television orchestra was formed under the able direction of the late Chaim Greenbaum. Television's ability to broadcast the visual art of ballet was quickly recognized, and a little-known ballerina from Sadler's Wells, Margot Fontaine, graced a now increasing number of private TV screens with her exquisite dancing. And before long, a whole company came up from Sadler's Wells, complete with scenery, costumes, and Frederick Ashton, to give before the cameras their ever-popular romp, Facade.
RCA founder David Sarnoff contracted Arturo Toscanini and recruited the NBC Symphony Orchestra for him. Toscanini's concerts from Studio 8H became legendary. In 1948, RCA's subsidiary, the commercial television network NBC, began to televise these concerts across the United States. Content really seemed to be king in those days.
The concerts would take place in the new RCA building, a skyscraper in Rockefeller Center, in NBC's state-of-the-art Studio 8H.
Tonight, for the first time in the history of this great science and art of radio, we are televising the great music of Wagner, the great interpretive genius of Toscanini, and the playing of his gifted artists in his orchestra. Never before in the history of the world was this possible. What a joy it is that this can be done still while our beloved maestro Toscanini is still a young man.
The fact that there are now 3 or 4 times as many Proms concerts on television as there were 10 years ago is certainly a sign of a developing interest in bringing that particular festival to a larger audience. I think there's also a greater understanding and a desire to communicate to a broad audience and a larger audience, not simply to an audience that knows everything about this music and doesn't need, therefore, to be given much context. I think that particular desire, which can be annoying to certain members of the audience who think, well, I know about Beethoven, I don't need to be told about that. I think that particular desire is a really good one, because we shouldn't take this love that we all feel for classical music for granted in an audience. And I think television's ability to be popular, to make the popular good and to make the good popular is something which is incredibly important and works on all sorts of different levels.
The last night of the Proms is a very difficult proposition because it's muddled up with all kinds of rather absurd, jingoistic, nationalistic nonsense. I'm all for hijinks parties, so who's to be rude about that? But it wasn't much to do with music, in my view. And the BBC has managed to move on from that situation as it was 10 or 15 years ago. And actually there is good music now in the last nights of the Proms, and there is adventurous music. A lot of it is light-hearted, but nothing wrong being light-hearted as far as I'm concerned. So it's a good celebration, and I'm astonished that so many people around the world should want to look at it, but they do.
You don't really want to go home and tell all your friends and family you mumbled through Land of Hope and Glory, do you?
No one was ever as clever as Leonard Bernstein in trying to articulate music to young people, old people, children. He could find the right words to every shape and form of music, whether he spoke about tempo or color or anything. He made composers so crystal clear to even 6-year-olds that they were all looking like they were in a toy store.
The first performance Leonard Bernstein conducted as newly appointed music director of the New York Philharmonic was a young people's concert in January 1958. It marked the beginning of a series of 53 concerts, all of which were, it's hard to believe this now, televised by the commercial US network CBS. Many of them were scheduled in prime time, probably as a reaction to Federal Communications Commission Chairman Newton Mino's famous speech referring to US television as a vast wasteland in 1961.
Now, what do you think that music's all about? Can you tell me? God. That's just what I thought you'd say. Cowboys, bandits, horses, the Wild West. I know my little daughter, Jamie, who's 5 years old and who's sitting up there, agrees with you. When she heard me play this piece, she said, "Oh, the Lone Ranger song. I.O. Silver." Well, I hate to disappoint her, and you too. But it really isn't about the Lone Ranger at all. It's about notes, E flats and F sharps. You see, no matter how many times people tell you stories about what music means, forget them. Stories aren't what music means about at all. Music is never about anything. Music just is. Music is notes, beautiful notes and sounds put together in such a way that we get pleasure out of listening to them. That's all there is to it.
In 1961, a unique event amazed French television viewers, Les Perses. The first television program in stereo was about to be transmitted, and during the run-up to the event, viewers were told how to position their radio next to the TV set in order to create a full stereo sound.
D'autres sont accourus des terres que nourrit le Nil immense.
Et les bateliers du delta avec leurs barques, multitude innombrable et terrible.
Les Perses, c'est mythique. Ça a été un grand moment de la télévision et même quelquefois c'est utilisé comme une référence. Bon, il est sûr qu'à l'époque il y avait une chaîne et une seule et que on pouvait mobiliser le public avec ce qui peut être à la fois une grande œuvre et en même temps une curiosité. Donc ça peut paraître être une gageure que la télévision ait pu montrer cette œuvre. Il faut dire qu'à l'origine de cela, il y avait un grand réalisateur, Jean Prat, un jeune compositeur du temps, Podromides, a beaucoup apporté. Et je vous dis, c'est une référence... je pense que beaucoup de ceux qui en parlent ne l'ont pas vu.
I can think of a number of different sorts of programs which have made a real impact on me. And some of them I saw first time round. Some of them I saw when they were repeated in archive programs. And I think that's just a reminder of the value of archive and the legacy that television makers have created for us as viewers in the next generation. So I can think of the energy and passion of Paul Totellier in those masterclasses that were filmed for the BBC.
Because what is important, to have a great accent, what makes a great accent? What makes a great accent? What makes a fine accent? You know what? It is a diminuendo. It is a diminuendo after. If you stay, you don't have that. But if you do, if you diminue, voilà. Good. Now, you will remember that forever. Yes. Because myself, I did not invent that. I got the tradition. That what makes an accent is a diminuendo after.
In the hands of someone really good, you suddenly get an insight into music and music making. I mean, the great sexton that I remember was Totellier. I mean, Totellier's masterclasses, with his somewhat tenuous grasp of English, or rather idiosyncratic grasp of English, but his love for music making, his love for other executants was overwhelming, and see him transported by the playing of someone. And he wasn't falsely modest either. I mean, he would say, no, listen to this, and then he would play something, and you would know that, and you could see him just swimming in pleasure.
My first live concert with the BBC was to be of Stravinsky conducting his own Firebird at the Royal Festival Hall with the Philharmonia Orchestra. I was scared stiff. A, I'd never done a live concert before in my life. B, I had never done a television version of Firebird. And C, what on earth can you do with this giant? And here we were in a position to be able to document one of the great giants of 20th century music.
It was the beginning of something entirely new in the world, because new equipment had been invented. The first lightweight, silent 16mm cameras. It was possible for the first time in history to follow musicians to places where the cameras had never been before, and to put images on the screen that had never been there before. The spirit of Jackie and the Train was something entirely new in the world. Nothing like that had ever been done before in a television music program.
Was für ihn die, glaube ich, Initialzündung war, waren die Konzerte in Tokio, die übertragen wurden. Und da ist ihm aufgegangen, wie viele Leute daran teilnehmen.
Ich habe jetzt wieder in Japan gesehen, dass zum Beispiel die 12 Konzerte, die ich da dirigiert habe, sind übertragen worden und die Gesellschaft schätzt die Zuhörerschaft an für ein Konzert durchschnittlich auf 18 bis 20 Millionen Menschen. Und wir spielen vor 3000.
Originally, I think that he conceived of musical films, performance, that were made for the camera.
These first made-for-television recordings of concerts were financed by the visionary Leo Kesh. In him, von Karajan found a partner who made many of his dreams come true, in a technical quality which stands out even today.
Ja, wir sind bereit zur Aufnahme.
Als junger Mann war er natürlich fasziniert, weil es einen Musikfilm in dem Sinn gab es ja gar nicht. Also, dass man abgefilmte Oper vielleicht, aber ein abgefilmtes Konzert. Und dann kam der Karajan erstmals und hat einen spannenden Thriller-Regisseur nicht von ungefähr geholt hat, den Clouseau.
I've known Karajan since I was a boy of 8, and I think he was breathing and sleeping and dreaming media as long as I can remember. It was such an important part of his life to deal with what he was still trying to discover, as opposed to scores and music and composers that he, by that time, had well absorbed. So most of the conversations of the many evenings I had with him were about what the camera can do and what it can't do, and how the light and how the post-production and how the edit, and it was all important to him. And I think the whole way Karajan's behavioral tenure on podiums evolved in the 60s and 70s and all the way to his very end was totally governed by an invisible camera that was somewhere haunting him in his sleep, I guess.
Ich möchte nicht nur, dass es schön klingt. Ich möchte auch, dass es schön aussieht. Musik ist nun eine Verkörperung der Schönheit.
Und das hat zu einem gewissen Extrem geführt. Und das Extrem war, dass er dann sogar Szenen mit einzelnen Musikern nachgestellt hat im Studio, nachdem der Film fertig war, nur weil ihm die Bewegung der Hörner zu vulgär oder zu impulsiv war. Er hat eigentlich den Beruf des Dirigenten, des Kondukators, er hat das hier sogar optisch wörtlich genommen.
Es ist wirklich eine akustische Interpretation meiner Absicht und ich verbringe für einen Film durchschnittlich 3 Monate am Schneidetisch, um das dann hinzubekommen. Aber dann weiß ich, es ist eine Darstellung, so wie Sie sie wahrscheinlich im Konzert von ganz wenigen Plätzen aus tatsächlich sehen können.
Cameras and gear that we had 50 years ago made it very, very difficult to do live performances. You really couldn't get close-ups. For example, you had to put so much light on that the performers hated it. I mean, some of them made protests by wearing green eye shades during performances even. And so trying to get round that was very difficult. I remember a series of Beethoven symphonies which Karajan did, in which they tried to deal with this problem by actually putting on material from several performances, video from several performances, and so you suddenly got a close-up of him conducting and being very emotional, being very emotive like this. And the audience was sufficiently sophisticated to know that he must be miming. He must have been miming in order to do that, because he would have had a camera at his feet. And that suddenly you thought, this is not about music making, this is about showbiz, if we're not very careful. And for that reason, that series, I think, didn't have the impact it should have done. Well, we don't need to do that now. The camera, the gears are so unobtrusive, nobody need know that it's being televised, and that has made a huge difference. The BBC had been talking to Britain about doing something, and Britain had already got the idea of Wearing Ringgrave when I came, so it was I can't claim it as my idea, but I had the job of persuading Britain that it was worth doing.
The supper scene was in fact a great challenge because it is everyone's talking at the same time. Everyone's talking at the same time. So we were trying visually to go around the table to create an ambience in which everybody is present. And then comes the great denouement where Owen says, I can go no further. I have to give up. I will not go into the military. And I remember it was a scene we had to do more than once, I can assure you of that.
How uneasy this is. We can do no good here. What can Coyle do? Does he think I shall plead with him? He is mistaken. If anyone can bring him round, she will. I could not bear her disapproval. Can he be my brother's son? I begin to doubt it.
Soldiers, centuries of them, he must do what we all have done, obey. Obey, believe, accept, that is all I need to do. But the orders are wrong.
In the 70s, my biggest impression came from Pink Floyd in Pompeii, which is a sort of unique film, extremely respectful also for the music, but also extremely inventive in terms of pictures.
I still think that people are fed up with films which are done in TV studios or which are done in concert halls or which are done in huge arenas and so on, because it's always the same thing. It's always the shots of the public going wild, and it's always the shots of the musicians sort of strutting on the stage. And Pink Floyd don't strut on the stage. They stand still. It's almost as though they were a kind of mummy in a way. They don't move around. They don't gesticulate wildly. And this sort of quiet Zen approach to their music, I think, has great appeal because it's different to all of the others. I cannot think of a single group that behaves on stage the way that the Pink Floyd do. Sometimes I remember seeing them on stage on other stages, and you couldn't tell who was playing what. I mean, it's very mysterious in a way. The other reason that the film still has some appeal is that there is an extraordinary marriage between Pompeii and the music of the Floyd, because we're talking about doing a concert film in an amphitheater which was not destroyed, but which was buried under ash and lava about 2,000 years ago. And this marriage of death and life and the Pink Floyd music, it all comes together.
Leonard Bernstein clearly had quite the opposite to Karajan's approach. He couldn't care less whether there was a camera, whether it was actually looking at him or whether it was looking at his feet or hair or whatever. He was all entranced in what he was doing, and sometimes so much so that the cameras were vibrating and the microphones fell off their various gaffs. And I think he was right. He just got on with what he wanted to do, which is music.
By 1973, television technology had made so much progress that Humphrey Burton, long-time head of music and arts at the BBC, was able to record Bernstein live from the Musikvereinssaal in Vienna, achieving the picture quality Herbert von Karajan had been striving for 10 years earlier.
La leçon de musique, c'est une idée qui est née au service de la recherche de l'ORTF, qui était dirigé par Pierre Schaeffer, donc l'inventeur de la musique concrète. Et pendant quelques années, il y avait eu des films faits autour de l'idée des grandes répétitions, entre autres un formidable film sur Scherchen. Et dans le même esprit, d'une télévision, si vous voulez, pédagogique, au sens noble du terme, de faciliter l'accès à la musique, la compréhension de la musique, par le biais de la sensibilité. Il a semblé intéressant d'organiser une mise en scène, c'est-à-dire un rapport, une relation entre un grand virtuose et un professionnel, un jeune professionnel, pas un débutant.
Il y a un grand développement qui est obtenu par un procédé assez simple. Toutes les voix graves répètent le même phonème, yoma. Une partie de ces voix, les contraltos et les ténors, montant toujours d'un demi-ton, les basses, au contraire, descendant toujours d'un demi-ton. Pendant ce temps-là, les sopranes répètent un autre mot, sari, mais eux sont immuables. Il y en a donc qui montent, d'autres qui descendent et d'autres qui sont immuables. Ils sont donc à trois personnages, mais trois personnages harmoniques et phonétiques. Et cela avec un grand crescendo qui aboutit a un effet assez particulier. C'est un canon à 12 voix où toutes les 12 voix entrent les unes après les autres, et ça fait comme une énorme draperie qui serait saisie par le vent et qui se déroulerait avec des mouvements courbes.
Des tourbillons.
Des tourbillons, exactement, des tourbillons.
Je crois beaucoup au fait que la télévision, qui est un grand vecteur de diffusion, est aussi un lieu de création et un outil de création. Et il faut que la télévision, enfin ça a toujours été dans ma conception, apporte une plus-value. C'est intéressant de retransmettre des événements musicaux, des pièces de théâtre, des événements artistiques divers. Mais ce qui est extrêmement important, c'est que la télévision joue de sa spécificité.
I don't particularly know that there are, really fantastic commissions in the last 20 years that have engendered some great television. But I know I sat next to Cristobal Halfter one day at the Siemens Musikstiftung, and he was surprised to hear that we had recorded his piece Elegies for the three Spanish poets, and he was even more surprised when I sent him the tape and told him that it won the International Emmy Award. So there were pieces that were hardly performed ever, that through their television adaptation, and that was a Christopher Nupen film, really got a second wind at least.
How is it possible to combine Spanish contemporary music, the tragedies of Lorca, Hernandez and Machado, the paintings of Goya, archived footage of the Spanish Civil War? How can you roll all this into one Christopher Nupen film? We had doubts.
As a young man, Pierre Boulez once provocatively suggested that the most elegant solution to the problem of opera is to blow up the opera houses. Although he has long become part of the musical establishment, he has not lost the capacity for surprising it. The merits of the Boulez Chéreau Ring were fiercely debated at its premiere at Bayreuth in 1976. 5 years later, at the last performance, it got standing ovations and has been called the Ring of the Century. We asked Pierre Boulez which scene in his production he liked best.
The beginning of the second act in Valkyrie, when Wotan, the second scene, I mean, when Wotan speaks to Brunhilde about all the secrets of his life, about what he missed, and his own anger at himself. And Chéreau did a marvelous thing. Wotan, of course, had this patch on the eye, and he was going to a mirror and taking the patch out. Chéreau asked me to do the orchestra as reduced as possible, that the Wotan could really speak to himself with a voice very, very low and very soft, and that was very impressive. For me, that was the most impressive of the scenes.
It took me about 7 years of going to Toronto back and forth to try and get Glenn Gould to do what we wanted to do, which was a 5-hour piece on Johann Sebastian Bach, which was his preferred subject.
When we did that famous film about the Goldberg Variations, that was done over a period of 3 months. The film shot by shot with one single camera, and we had total control over everything that was done.
It was very mysterious because all along the work with Glenn Gould, he always said that we have to complete our mission by the age of 50, and I didn't know really what he meant. But on his 50th birthday, I got a call saying that he had actually passed away. And that was very, very frightening because there was clearly a premonition there that no one really took too seriously at the time.
Rome has always been a very lucky city for me, not only because of the 3 tenor concert that I did there, but because I was invited shortly thereafter by Andrea Anderman to direct for television, for world television, the Tosca that he had produced in the original settings, which meant that we were going to do live at 11 o'clock in the morning for Act 1 in the Church of Sant'Andrea della Valle. We were going to do Palazzo Farnese, second act, at 9 o'clock at night, and we were going to do Act 3 on the top of the Castel Sant'Angelo at 5 o'clock in the morning, 5 and 6 o'clock with the sun rising. It was again, a technical challenge beyond belief. We had 27 cameras for this event, 3 trucks, 3 control rooms, because there was not time in the day to move from one location with the same team. So we had 3 sets of cameramen, 3 sets of lighting people. It was a wonderful circus, and it was a great, great experience.
Olezzava la terra, stride all'uscio dell'orto, e un passo sfiorava l'arena. Entrava ella fragrante, fra le braccia.
I met Pierre Boulez when I was 15, and I was really impressed because he was writing books, he was a composer, he was a conductor, he was a sort of pop star to us. Sur un Cise, the first film we made together, it was really quite an ambitious project because for the first time we wanted to bring closer to a very young audience quite a difficult music.
For me, to me, it was a very good recording because it was a kind of mixture of rehearsal and performance.
So we took a bunch of children, a school class, into La Cité de la Musique, ensemble intercontemporain, on the stage.
And I knew perfectly what I wanted to say to the audience. I had my paper with a series of examples, and I explained each example before and trying to make that as compact as possible and as practical as possible.
He started with a very simple concept. It was a concept of a seed, and everybody could understand this. Children and adults, and it was easy to understand. And it got a metaphor on his oeuvre, because he started with very simple, a seed, first idea, one note of his, or sort of 3 notes, a motive in his music, which he later developed to something very complex, something very impressive, etc., etc. So for the children it was easy to understand, and for us filmmakers was the opportunity to have also a starting point. And this idea of a seed was to stay with Pierre Boulez, with the musicians, the players, and with the audience.
At the end also, the rehearsal was alone, with the musician alone, and we had very seriously prepared the rehearsal, what we wanted to do. And then, we recorded, and the camera was also, the movements of camera were very well prepared. We changed, for all example, we changed the point of view, of the soloist or the 3 pianists or the harpist and so on and so forth.
Cette pièce est courte et c'est comme une graine. Et pour moi, je dis oui, je vais réfléchir à lui donner plus d'ampleur. Comment je peux lui donner plus d'ampleur? Alors j'ai réfléchi sur plusieurs solutions. Alors il y a beaucoup de façons d'élargir une idée. Vous entendez qu'il y a une note qui est précédée d'une espèce d'appoggiature, une note, et puis une désinence rapide. Alors je me suis dit, oui, c'est une note qui est importante, elle est colorée par un accord qui vient avant, donc on n'entend pas uniquement une note, mais on entend quelque chose, une espèce d'objet. Et c'est cet objet que je vais élargir.
What would we have given to have actually heard Paganini play? What would we have given to actually talk to Beethoven about writing the Fifth Symphony? This is something that our modern day artists can be happy about, that their productions, their performances can be documented for posterity.
Ты всех среди
Anna Netrebko. Yes, she had been singing in St. Petersburg for some time. She was singing elsewhere, but it was only until she came here to Salzburg and she sat on a red sofa in Traviata that one could appreciate this incredible charisma, this incredible talent, this incredible ability to communicate. And yes, television helped her to stardom.
In 2005, the British choreographer Royston Muldoon, well known for his community dance activities, worked in Berlin with 250 children and teenagers from all walks of life to create a dance performance of Igor Stravinsky's Sacre du Printemps. Live music was provided by Simon Rattle and the Berlin Philharmonic, an event fortunately documented for television and the big screen.
One.
Flash mob opera has been tried out before in various locations, but Swiss television's complete Traviata at Zurich Central Station was a genuine first in 2008. In our event-driven societies, spectacles like this tend to achieve results, and this Swiss Traviata was apparently the most successful homegrown cultural program ever.
Io l'obbedisco, parto, aggiungeste. Prendete questo fiore. Perché? Per riportarlo. Quando? Quando sarà appassito. Io c'è, e domani. E ben, domani. Io son felice. Domani di campano. Oh, quanto amo, quanto, io son felice. Amarmi di campano. Oh, quanto amo, quanto. Parto. Addio. Il più non bravo. Addio.
The key to the whole success is it has to be live, and nothing but live. Anything that's taped or delayed or tape delayed or whatever will not work. People smell it. In the age of the internet, the communication is total. People realize that they're actually being led into something that they are not participating in. And today they like seeing people sing off key, they like people falling off the stage, they like beds breaking down in terribly old-fashioned stagings. They actually go like they would go to the opera. They take an abonnement, they have 8 tickets for the season, and for us it's now 550,000 admissions in Germany alone for what I think is about the 42nd broadcast to the cinemas. It's been an uphill battle going from art house cinemas to multiplex cinemas. Today there are 180 cinemas in Germany alone and about 1,500 cinemas throughout the world in over 150 countries. And I think everyone realizes if it's not too prolific, I think it goes with the old Horowitz saying, less is more.
As we have seen, television is a constantly developing medium. In the same way that radio and records were once perceived as major threats to live performances, television's advent was supposed to herald the death of the cinema. Isn't it a peculiar irony that today's state-of-the-art television fills cinemas with life from the Met and other opera houses?
We are moving very fast. It's a revolutionary climate we live in as far as communications is concerned, and it's splendid that music, with its long history and long tradition, should be taking full advantage of that. And it is very exciting that there should be audiences to see an opera in a cinema.